Now, following the brutal murder of Kashmiri Pandit Rahul Bhat, the Kashmir Valley is now in a state of unrest. Massive protests have erupted in Jammu with forces firing tear gas on protesters. Members of the Kashmiri Pandit community took to the streets in different parts of the Union Territory to protest against the brutal killings. Protesters have blocked the Srinagar-Jammu National Highway near the Wesu village on Thursday evening. The wife of Rahul Bhat said that her husband felt insecure while working in Budgam. Slain Kashmiri Pandit Rahul Bhat's mortal remains arrived in Jammu for the final rites. Meanwhile, the Ministry of Home Affairs officials along with the IB will review preparedness of Amarnath Yatra, which will commence from the 30th of June after a gap of 2 years. Let me cut across to Ashraf Wani as well as Sunilji Bhat, both of them tracking those developments in the Kashmir Valley. Let me start with Ashraf. Ashraf, Kashmir Valley seems to be in a state of unrest with thousands of Kashmiri Pandits who are out on the streets demanding some kind of security after the death of Rahul Bhat, another targeted killing of a Kashmiri Pandit. It seems like the community now is furious, claiming that the BJP government, the central government, all governments have failed them.
Absolutely, Nabila. In fact, in my 30 years of this career as a journalist in the Jammu and Kashmir, I have seen first time this kind of anger among the Kashmiri Pandit community, that too when they are in exile. Yesterday evening, these protesters started across the Kashmir Valley, particularly in all those camps where the Kashmiri Pandits are residing, in the specially made colonies where mostly the Kashmiri Pandit employees have been kept during last 10 years. They felt that if their colleague is being killed in a broad daylight in his office, what can be their destiny? That is why this anger we have seen. I am outside the Sheikhpura housing colony, which is one of the housing colonies for the Kashmiri migrant employees here in the Budgam district. It has been completely sealed by the security forces. In fact, we were not allowed to enter inside that housing colony. In fact, it is unofficial, undeclared curfew here, where these employees are still sitting on the road and since morning demanding the justice. They are demanding that Lieutenant Governor of Jammu and Kashmir should come to the spot and assure these employees that there will not be any kind of such incident again in the Kashmir Valley. That is their prime demand, and also the demand that how this family gets the justice. So far, the Lieutenant Governor of Jammu and Kashmir has called in the bereaved family, the wife of Rahul Bhat, and they are giving her a kind of sense secured that everything possible will be done for her. But big question is that when the government is claiming for last so many years that everything is fine in the Kashmir Valley, it seems that nothing is fine. It is not the first time when the minority community has been targeted, particularly the Kashmiri Pandit. It started since last year in the month of April when 2 teachers were killed in a school building in Eidgah area of Srinagar. Then also a pharmacist, Makhalal Bandru, was killed. Then another minority community member was killed in Anantnag, another one in Pulwama. And yesterday, Rahul Bhat was shot dead in his office where he was performing the duty for the government. Now, big allegations from the family of, as you said, of Rahul Bhat, that he was being taken to the Chadura instead of Budgam. The Chadura Tehsildar office is not so much secure. There is not any kind of frisking. The gunman easily penetrated into the office and shot him dead. Now, in fact, we are seeing still the administration, the police, the security forces in a hurry. They are trying to motivate these protesting employees here in the Srinagar. We have seen first time hundreds of all employees gathering outside the Sheikhpura house where Rahul Bhat and his family was residing for last 10 years. They just want a word from the government, and probably that is being on the way, that the government will come up with a statement and will assure these protesting employees here in the Sheikhpura Budgam.
You know, Ashraf, from what we see there, it really clearly looks like the community today is so frustrated. And this, of course, is targeted killings, because we hear that the Rahul Bhat, the man who was murdered, the Kashmiri Pandit who was murdered, was literally called out by those terrorists. And as soon as he got up from his seat, he was shot at. So that clearly appears like a terror attack which is being targeted towards the Kashmiri Pandit community. Sunilji Bhat, of course, are tracking the family members, speaking to many of those Kashmiri Kashmiri Pandit. Sunil ji, these kind of targeted killings that's been happening since October, a lot more. At least 3 Kashmiri Pandits have been killed, 2 of them have been injured. It's scary to say the least how the community has managed to live there for so many years despite this kind of overwhelming threat to the community.
Absolutely, Nabila. The Kashmiri Pandit community has been feeling insecure in the Kashmir Valley, and they have been raising their concerns time and again with the administration. And it seems that the administration showed totally an indifferent attitude towards their problems and sufferings, and that is why we are seeing killings after killings of the Kashmiri Pandit community in the Kashmir Valley. The community is in anger, and that is why we are seeing protests taking place even within the Kashmir Valley. The Kashmiri Pandit community has shown a lot of courage. They have mustered a lot of courage, and they have hit the streets in a hostile atmosphere in the Kashmir Valley, and they have staged protests, and their demand is that the government employees belonging to the Kashmiri Pandit community who are serving in the Kashmir Valley should be shifted to Jammu and adjusted in Jammu. They are saying that there is an atmosphere of terror that is prevailing in the Kashmir Valley, and it is the Kashmiri Pandit community who has to face the brunt of the violence that is being unleashed by the terrorists and the separatist elements sponsored by Pakistan. The Kashmiri Pandit community across the globe right now is very concerned. They are, staging protests with the authorities. And we spoke to the wife of Rahul Bhat earlier in the day, and she also said that Rahul Bhat had expressed his concerns with his seniors. He wanted to be transferred to Budgam district headquarters because he was feeling insecure in Chadura. He said that there was no adequate security in Chadura, but all his pleas went to deaf ears, and no action was taken as far as his pleas was concerned. And yesterday, terrorists carried out his assassination in broad daylight inside his office, and the terrorists, when they stormed inside the office, they took his name, that who is Rahul Bhat, and when few of Rahul Bhat's colleagues pointed out that that person sitting on the chair is Rahul Bhat, they shot him point blank, and he got seriously injured. But unfortunately, when he was rushed to the hospital, he succumbed to his injuries. The important thing that comes to light is that the presence of Kashmiri Pandits is an eyesore for the separatist elements as well as for the terrorists in the Kashmir Valley. They don't want the presence of the terrorists in the they don't want the presence of the Kashmiri Pandits in the Kashmir Valley. The terrorists are unleashing a fresh reign of terror against the minuscule minority of Kashmir, that is Kashmiri Pandits. We remember what happened in late 80s and early 90s in the Kashmir Valley. The Kashmiri Pandits had to face persecution. They were targeted. There were gang rapes that took place. Kashmiri women were targeted. Kashmiri Pandit women were targeted. And there was even one incident where a woman was cut into pieces on a sawmill. So such horrific crimes have taken place against the Kashmiri Pandit community. And in 2010, the then UPA government had come up with a special employment package for the Kashmiri Pandit youth. But it was a flawed policy because the youth were asked to serve in the Kashmir Valley. They had to flee the Kashmir Valley in 1990 due to terrorism, and they were made to go to Kashmir again, and they were asked to serve there, and they were asked to sign
and it
a bond.
shows what courage it took for the Kashmiri Pandits to actually go back to the Kashmir Valley after the kind of persecution that they faced at the hands of many of those the terrorists who were aligned along that region. But stay with us. The wife of the slain Kashmiri Pandit, Rahul Bhat, has spoken to India today, and she claims, and while she narrates this horrific ordeal, that her husband Rahul Bhat often tried to inform his officials how unsafe he felt in Budgam, and also requested for a transfer, but that fell on deaf ears. She now claims that some of the people from her husband's office, a government office there, may have conspired with terrorists. A very important statement to note, because if this is true, then it's got to be looked into.
मुझे बताइए, जब राहुल भट्ट वहाँ 2010 में काम करने गए, तब से अब तक कभी उन्होंने आपसे कहा कि उनको कोई डर लगता है?
भैया, वो पहले इधर बड़गाम तहसील ऑफिस में थे, वहाँ पे कभी उनको कुछ लगा ही नहीं। डीसी को इन्होंने बहुत बारी बोला कि मेरे को ट्रांसफ़र उधर नहीं लेनी, वो दूर है, चाडूरा बहुत दूर है बड़गाम से। हम तो शेखपुरा में रहते हैं, वहाँ से बहुत दूर है। वो उसने पता नहीं कौन सी जिद निकाली, उसने 2 साल से उसकी ट्रांसफ़र ही नहीं की वापस वहाँ से। डीसी बड़गाम ने और एसीआर ने, जो नया एसीआर है, उसने पहले भी बोला था उनको कि मेरे को यहाँ से थोड़ा डीसी ऑफिस लाओ। जब पिछली बार उसका वो जो 2 मारे थे टीचर्स, तब हम फिर आए थे। मैंने इसको बोला था हम नहीं जाएंगे, मगर उसने नहीं माना, बोला मेरे को ड्यूटी जाना है। उन दिनों भी उनको बोला था इनको डीसी ऑफिस में ही रखो, वहाँ तब भी सेफ्टी है। इधर एक गार्ड नहीं था इसको बाहर। भैया कितने लोग उसके पास आते थे, सर के ऊपर से लोग होते थे।
कोई सुरक्षा नहीं थी वहाँ?
कोई कुछ भी नहीं। एसडीएम ऑफिस साथ है, कोई एक गार्ड नहीं था बाहर जो चेक करता। इनके पास रिवॉल्वर थी। 3 बंदे थे, क्या सुनने में आया 3 बंदे थे। 3 बंदों के पीछे पूछा राहुल भट्ट कौन है।
अच्छा, नाम
पूछ के गोली शूट किया। वो अपनी चेयर पे बैठा था, अपनी ही चेयर पे शूट किया उसको। भैया हिलने का भी मौका नहीं दिया। उसके पास लोग बहुत आते थे।
कल जब सुबह वो दफ्तर से निकले, आपकी कुछ बातचीत हुई थी जाने से पहले?
दफ्तर तो वो रोज ही निकलते थे। मैंने 10 मिनट पहले उनको फ़ोन किया था, हमारे घर में काम चल रहा था। मैंने बोला हो गया पूरा, मैंने बोला आ जाना जल्दी। बोलता ठीक है ठीक है ठीक है। तो उसी के 5 मिनट के बाद ही वो उधर आए। मैंने उसको क्यों नहीं बोला तो अभी निकल। मैं उसको बोलती थी मत जाओ उधर, डीसी ऑफिस ट्रांसफर करा ले, छोड़ दे नौकरी, हमको नौकरी भी नहीं चाहिए। मुझे पता है तू वहाँ पे सारी जगह तेरे को जानते हैं, सारे जानते। बोलता है मैं सेफ रहूँगा, मैं सेफ रहूँगा। मुझे सारे जानते हैं। उसको नहीं पता था उनमें कोई निकलेगा, कोई निकलेगा। उनमें गरीबों की भी बहुत मदद करता था।
तो आपको लगता है कि सरकार कश्मीरी पंडित समुदाय के प्रति गंभीर नहीं
बना रही है, बलि का बकरा बना रही है उधर। वो कुछ नहीं सोच रही है, ना सेफ्टी का ना कुछ। वो वहाँ पे बलि के बकरे हैं सारे, जाके काटेंगे ही उनको।
32 साल से जो ये चल रहा है और 2008 के बाद जो पीएम पैकेज सरकार ने दिया था, उसके अंडर दैट पैकेज बहुत सारे एम्प्लॉयज़ बिकॉज ऑफ लाइवलीहुड वहाँ पे चले गए थे। बट उनको टारगेटेड किलिंग कर दिया गया जा रहा है डे बाय डे। और जो गज़वाए हिंद और ये जो टेररिस्ट रेजिस्टेंट फोर्स जो भी अभी टीआरएफ जिसको बोलते हैं, एक एक करके उन्होंने थ्रेट दिया है कि कश्मीरी हिंदू को हम मारेंगे, यहाँ पे हम कश्मीरी हिंदू को नहीं रहने देंगे, यहाँ पे इंडिया हम बसने नहीं देंगे। तो गवर्नमेंट को इसका संज्ञान लेना चाहिए और गवर्नमेंट को पूरा सोचना चाहिए कि गवर्नमेंट ने स्केपगोट्स कैसे बना लिए कश्मीरी हिंदू को। कश्मीरी हिंदू जो कि इतनी माइनॉरिटी कम्युनिटी है।
कश्मीरी पंडित समाज ने एक अपना होनहार नौजवान खोया है। स्वाभाविक है लोगों में बहुत गुस्सा है। जिन परिजनों ने अपने ब्लड रिलेशन में अपने रिश्तेदार को, अपने परिवार के सदस्य को खोया है, यकीनन उनको गुस्सा है। ये पाकिस्तान के जो कायर आतंकवादियों ने घटना की है, इसके विरुद्ध पूरे जम्मू कश्मीर में, पूरे हिंदुस्तान में गुस्सा है। इन सभी कायर पाकिस्तानी आतंकवादियों को जमीन के पाताल से निकाल कर इनको मौत के घाट उतारेंगे। किसी पाकिस्तानी को, किसी दहशतगर्द को नहीं बख्शेंगे।
हमें भी इस चीज़ का दुख हो रहा है और इस प्रकार की घटनाएं होने से कहीं ना कहीं जो शांति प्रक्रिया का प्रोसेस चल रहा है उसमें कई अड़चन आती है। लेकिन मुझे लगता है कि जल्द ही इन लोगों का जो गुस्सा है, कश्मीरी पंडित मुलाजिमों को सुरक्षा के साथ किस प्रकार से हम करें, इसके लिए केंद्र में भी बात की जाएगी और जी एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन।
All right, here's some big breaking news coming in. A big crackdown on terror in the valley. 3 government employees have been terminated by the Jammu and Kashmir admin. Crackdown to eliminate terror elements within the system. Here, remember, we saw how Rahul Bhat, Kashmiri Pandit, was gunned down while he was seated at his office. Almost looked like a case of targeted killing. Exactly what his family members say, that he was literally hunted down from his office and shot at. A big crackdown now on the terror in the valley. We're looking at 3 government employees who've been terminated by the Jammu and Kashmir admin. A crackdown to eliminate terror elements within the system. Remember, we're looking at the slain Rahul Bhatt's wife, who claimed that some of Rahul Bhatt's colleagues could have conspired with terrorists. Now, these are claims that are, of course, very serious and got to be looked into. And post that, we're looking at a crackdown on the terror valley, on terror in the valley there, with 3 government employees who have now been terminated by the Jammu and Kashmir admin. The crackdown is to eliminate terror elements within the system. Sunilji, but for more on that, Sunil, 3 government employees have been terminated by the Jammu and Kashmir admin. What does that really tell? Who are these 3 people? Have they been, have any links with terrorists been established with these government employees who've been detained?
Well, Nabila, this is a continuous process that was initiated, a couple of years ago by the J&K government, that terror sympathizers who are there in the J&K administration, action is being taken against them. And in the latest incident, we see that Altaf Hussain, who is the Altaf Hussain Pandit, he is the chemistry professor in Kashmir University. He has been sacked, he has been terminated by the Jammu and Kashmir administration, and the two other government employees are Muhammad Maqbool Hajam, he is a teacher in school education department, and Ghulam Rasool, a Jammu and Kashmir police constable. So this exercise is being carried out to basically weed out the terror sympathizers from the J&K administration, to cleanse the J&K administration of the terror sympathizers. And in the recent incident also, if we see that in the Rahul Bhat's assassination case, Rahul Bhat's wife has alleged that there could be few terror sympathizers in his own office, in his own department, who could have conspired with the terrorists, and that is why this assassination was carried out. So it's a big challenge for the J&K administration. There are terror sympathizers who are still there within the system, and many people, many observers say that these terror sympathizers are leaking crucial information to terror groups about the movement of the members of the minority communities, or even the policemen, or even the army personnel who are coming on leave to their homes in the Kashmir Valley. So this action is being initiated by the J&K administration. The effort on part of J&K administration is to free the J&K administration from the terror sympathizers.
Yeah.
But many observers say that the government still needs to do a lot.
Absolutely, Sunilji, but thank you very much for joining us with those details. Undoubtedly, we understand the fear that has gripped the Kashmiri Pandit community within the valley. This is the third targeted killing of a Kashmiri Pandit in that region since October. We're hoping that there's some assurance that comes their way at the earliest.